The transcript?
Yeah, when it stopped recording, I was saying, and thank you, Amy. You're such an invaluable part of this group in the recovery, and it summarized it. And then Jill goes on complimenting Amy a lot.
That's funny.
So yeah, so everybody have a heads up. While this is recording, you could end up in a transcript. So we're going to stop the recording as soon as I'm finished reading the part of the big book and commenting on it. So if you don't want your voice in the transcript, don't say anything. And then we'll make it really clear at the end that we've stopped recording. So just a little summary of where we are. We're reading the doctor's opinion. And the reason we're doing that is part of our disease is a physical one. And it's super important that we understand that it is a disease. And Dr. Silkworth, way back when this book was written, suspected that there was something wrong with us. And there truly is. We have an enzyme, 10% of us do. And you can read about this in the website that I'm going to be launching. I've written an article about it with all the references. So if you want to go back into that, you can. So now we're in the Roman numeral part of the book. Thanks, Amy, which is page XXX. And we've just been going over the classification of alcoholics that are on that page. And one of the things I just want to comment on before I get into reading this is when I first started reading this book, I was looking at how different some of these people were from me. And my ego was saying, well, that person's a psychopath. I'm clearly not a psychopath. This book has nothing to do with me. Or I'd say the manic depressive type, and I'd see those words, which we're about to read, and I'd go, well, that's not me. So when they say to you, when you're reading the book, look for the similarities. Don't look for the differences. And that's also why we have to ignore the language. Remember that the language of gender, because obviously when Bill was writing this book, he was not trying to go into anything other than the man was the alcoholic and it was the long-suffering wife. Okay, today we know that's not the case. And there's also gender issues probably now that Bill wouldn't have even begun to contemplate, 85, 86 years ago. The point is, whatever your gender, whatever your age, whatever your race, alcoholism knows absolutely no boundaries. It's colorblind. It is financial level blind. It takes on anyone who is willing to listen to it. It takes us all down, no matter what our social status, no matter if we're a celebrity or if we're a commoner or whatever, it doesn't matter. It goes for us, and it's sitting there very patient, waiting for us. But today we've got a program for that. So as I'm reading these classifications of alcoholics, don't get hung up on the metaphors. Don't get hung up on the definitions. Look for the similarities. It's the same when we're going to read Bill's story next. And that's the whole purpose why I've gone back to the beginning of this book for you guys specially. This is your homework here. I want you to be identifying with these pages and seeing the similarities. And that's going to be unique for each and every one of you because each and every one of you is unique. It's also why your higher power is unique, but that's another subject. Okay, so we're on page XXX. The first full paragraph was the classification of alcoholics. And it says, second full paragraph starts, the classifications of alcoholics seems most difficult and in much detail is outside the scope of this book. There are, of course, the psychopaths who are emotionally unstable. We are familiar with this type. They are always going on the wagon for keeps, and they're over remorseful and make many resolutions, but never a decision. Now, never a decision. Even if the psychopath part doesn't resonate with you, never making a decision. I mean, come on, that's us. We're the relapsers. We're never totally all the way in the room. We've never made a decision to completely get over this because we're still romancing a little bit in our head what it was like when we were drinking and using. Do you guys understand that? Not if they're whether it's a virtual or one not doesn't matter. Okay. Then it says, there is the type of man who is unwilling to admit that he cannot take a drink. He plans various ways of drinking. He changes his mind or his environment. There is the type who always believes that after being entirely free from alcohol for a period of time, he can take a drink without danger. Oh, underline that one. Like, isn't that the biggest fantasy of every alcoholic in here? That one day, and it comes up again later in the book, that we're going to be able to drink with impunity, or for that matter, use anything that we're struggling with impunity. Oh yeah, I wait long enough and I'll be fixed good enough. I go to rehab long enough, I'll be healthy enough. And then the vicious cycle starts all over again. Does that sound familiar? Let's see some nods. Yeah, I like that. Everybody's unanimous on that one. Okay. There is the manic depressive type who is perhaps the least understood by his friends, and about a whole chapter could be written. One little comment on that. I was on antidepressants. Who wouldn't be? You drink that much alcohol? Alcohol's a depressant. I stopped drinking the alcohol, didn't have to take the antidepressants. And in fact, I found that drug was causing all sorts of other side effects that were going on with me. Today, I'm happy to report I am drug-free. I'm not on anything but vitamins, baby, and that's just, oh, and iron infusions. But that's another article in our men's thing. Iron's super important in alcoholics. We got to get that checked out. Okay, new paragraph, halfway down, triple X. Then there are types entirely normal in every respect, except in the effect alcohol has upon them. Ha! Gee, does that sound familiar? They are often able, intelligent, friendly people, like every square in this room when you're sober. I love you guys sober, not so much when you call me drunk. Okay, but that's not happening now. This is good. You guys are getting this. But see that sentence? You're normal in every respect except in the effect alcohol has upon you. Read that out to yourself. Right? I'm normal in every respect except you put alcohol in me and you won't be talking to this version of Jill. Okay, we're now at a paragraph starting all these, and I'd like that paragraph to be all highlighted. And basically what this paragraph is going to tell us that all of them cannot stop the craving once we drink. Okay, all these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without develop the phenomenon of craving. Is that true for you? Can you drink and not develop the phenomenon of craving? Now that's unanimous too. Okay, I love it. This phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy. So this is Dr. Silkworth writing at the beginning of this book, right? Now we know we're allergic to ethyl alcohol. We're not bad people. We have a disease and an allergy. And it differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. No different than being diabetic. I am alcoholic. I cannot process ethyl alcohol in my system without developing a mental craving, a obsession with it, and a physical allergy that causes me to drink to blackout. And even if I start one night kidding myself that I can have one glass of wine, and I made it through that night, Does it stop there? It escalates very quickly. And my experience is every time I relapsed, I went back where I left off and I went from 0 to 60 and beyond. Does that experience seem familiar to anybody? Like, you cannot drink for 30 days, 60 days, but you go back out there and it's not for a glass of wine. It's for let's load up the fridge with vodka and buy a case and start all the hiding again. We don't live our life like that today. It has never been, by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. Do you know they're selling pills now to alleviate alcoholism? I mean, you name it, there's a cure. As I've been doing the research for the website, it's phenomenal what some of the things are people are saying you can take to get over this. But notice what it's saying. Take this tablet to get over that drug, right? Take this drug to get over that drug. We know in here that the answer is a spiritual solution. Okay, forget what the pharmacies are pumping out and the different places are telling you can take to stop this. In my experience, and there's a lot of it, I would probably guess I could add all your relapses together, and that's my history. So the fact I'm here clean and sober and able to lead this meeting is nothing short of a miracle. How did I do it? I'm teaching you how. If you want what I have, and you say you do, that's why you're here, then just do what I did. Don't pick up the first drink. Don't pick up whatever you were going to use. Step number 1. You can't do any of the rest of this stuff unless you leave it down. Those are the cannots in how it works. The cannots are the ones that we're still using and drinking. You guys know you can't come in here drunk and high and get anything out of this meeting. You won't remember it. I sure couldn't teach it. Okay. It has never been, by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest, and right under this in red, is entire abstinence. You don't get diagnosed with diabetes and then 5 days later go out and say, well, I'm going to have a sugar high. Do you see the insanity of our disease? We know we have it. Don't pick up. Last paragraph on page XXX. This immediately precipitates, comes before, us into a seething cauldron of debate. In other words, we're going to bang on a lot arguing about this. Much has been written pro and con, but among physicians, the general opinion seems to be that chronic alcoholics are doomed. Underline that, baby. That's the reality. This is a fatal disease. If you keep doing what you're doing, you're going one of 3 places. You're going into an institution, be it a hospital or a rehab center, or a jail, or you're going in a box, or incinerated, or whatever your choice happens to be, but there's no other choice. We do as we're suggested, and we have a life happier than we could have ever dreamed possible. That is a promise. Okay, so now we're at the top of the doctor's opinion, page XXX1. What is the solution? Now, you'll often hear in Alcoholics Anonymous, live in the solution. And that's where I would like you to be today. Stop beating yourself up for what's water under the bridge. That's living in the problem. We're now working on our version 2.0. I am living in Jill 2.0. I am not reliving Jill 1.0. That was me then without a program. This is me now with a program. Whether you want your best version of yourself is up to you now. So, what is the solution? Perhaps I can best answer this by relating one of my experiences. And remember, we've got the doctor writing here. About 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought in to be treated for chronic alcoholism. We know today this is Bill Wilson, author of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And this is at Towns Medical Center in New York City, where Dr. Silkworth was an addict and drug specialist, and he was treating him. He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage. In other words, his guts were gone from all the alcohol. Today we call it Crohn's disease, colitis, all the different things we call it. gut disease largely because we drank a lot of alcohol, and seemed to be a case of pathological mental deterioration. So, you know, he's heading down the wet brain path. You know, he's destroyed his brain. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. When he was admitted at the time to Towns Hospital, his wife Lois signed a do not resuscitate order that's copied in the book, Pass It On. So Bill is on his way out. He's been in Towns Hospital, which is a sanitarium for the incurable addict and alcoholic, and they don't think he's coming out again. So again, this is Dr. Silkworth talking. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. Bill thought he was a goner. Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. Sometimes we get lucky. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. 1 year later, he called to see me, and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name and partly recognized his features, but there all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged from a man that was brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. I talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel that I'd known him before. To me, he was a stranger. And so he left me. A long time has passed with no return to alcohol. That's an option for you guys, right? When I need a mental uplift, I often think of another case brought in by a physician prominent in New York. The patient had made his own diagnosis and, deciding his situation hopeless, had hidden in a deserted barn, determined to die. So this guy's isolated now to the point where he's just doomed. He's given up on living. He was rescued by a searching party and, in desperate condition, brought to me. Following his physical rehabilitation, he had a talk with me in which he frankly stated he thought that treatment a waste of effort. Ever been to that point where you think, one more rehab? What's the point? Anyone recognize that one? Okay, you're getting free rehab, babies. This is the treatment right here. This is what you needed to know. So he thought the treatment a waste of effort unless I could assure him, which no one ever had, you wouldn't be here if you'd ever been convinced, that in the future he would have the willpower to resist the impulse to drink. Wow, we know today, no matter what amount of willpower we have, we can't stop drinking, right? We know today that we have to find a spiritual solution. Do you guys get that? There is no amount of your intelligence, your way of doing this program, that is going to keep you in here counting days. Give it over. That's the point of step 3. Every time we go back into self-pity and self-will, we are blocked from the sunlight of the Spirit. You're getting in your own way. And I had to get out of my own way after decades of dancing around programs, rehab. I've read every friggin' book, I swear to God, there is written on this subject. I know it all here. But that longest distance of going from my head to my heart, huge trip for me. But when I finally got it, I haven't gone back to here. I catch myself. Oh yeah, I'm no saint. I catch myself getting back into self-will, starting to think I can do my program my way. You know, cutting back on meetings, not turning up with sponsor appointments. Those are all things that led to relapse. Not being willing to move on with the steps, making excuses for not doing what I'm told, going and doing what I know I shouldn't do anyway, setting myself up in situations I know that are dangerous for me. We're in the holidays right now. You know, I would set myself up to fail time and time again. Today, I don't do that. And in early sobriety, I've got to be careful to place myself in this room as the number one priority. Because unless I do that for Jill, there is no Jill. to do the rest of the steps. Jill goes back out there again. Okay, so his alcoholic problem was so complex and his depression so great that we felt his only hope would be through what we called moral psychology. And we doubted if even that would have effect. However, and now we're at the top of page XXXII, he did become, quote unquote, sold on the ideas contained in this book. Here's the result. He has not had a drink for a great many years. This is the hopeless alcoholic. I see him now and then, and he's as fine a specimen of manhood as one could wish to meet. Closing remarks from Dr. Silkworth. I earnestly, from the bottom of my heart, advise every alcoholic to read, underline it, this book through. Not just little bits that somebody tells you to go and read, from beginning to end. And though perhaps he came to scoff, so though perhaps you came in here thinking, oh boy, here we go again, that's not going to work, he may remain to pray. In other words, the answer is spiritual. And that is signed from William D. Silkworth, MD. So I came in AA to get sober. I'm staying for the rest of it. But it didn't work for me until I did exactly what you just read in that last paragraph. Read this book through. It's not that complicated. You can go to 25 meetings a day and you still won't have practiced the program. The program is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I had to go through that. And believe me, this is how I relapsed many times too, with a sponsor. Just like I'm helping you guys, line by line. Because my sponsor has taken me through this book, line by line, and then asked me the questions I've asked you. And then I submitted my homework. And she went over it, and then she shared with me what her thoughts were on the homework, and we'd done the steps and we moved on. And that's exactly what I'm doing with you. So if you believe that it can work for a relapser like me, and you know how smart you are, set aside everything you think you know. That's what our set aside prayer is at the beginning of our Sunday night Big Book Club meetings, right? Get out of your own way. Put aside everything that you thought you learned. Stop making excuses like I did for why I wasn't like everybody else in this book, and find the similarities, because they're huge. And from here, what we do now is we move on to Bill's story. Now, Bill's story, we're talking about the Second World War and a young man who's already had problems with alcohol. He's had some disappointments in life. The woman he first wanted to marry died of a medical condition. He's had some setbacks. We're going to listen to his story, and a lot of things he talks about you're not going to relate to. First of all, he's a man. Okay, so let's get over that. Let's look for the similarities. And I'm going to break the words down that are, necessary to get the message. And I would like you to go back and, where appropriate, say these words, read this to yourself out loud. Tell yourself a bedtime story. And where it's appropriate, Say it in the first person. You know, go back to your morning meditation that we do every morning and meditate at 8 and read it out to yourself in first person. I read it, generally speaking, in the we version when I read out loud because this is a we program. But what I'm trying to get you to understand by explaining this, and it's a really important point, is by reading aloud and saying it in the first person, I'm trying to get you to move it from your head to your heart. Because I can read any book out loud, and all I'm doing is telling a story. What I'm trying to get you to do or help you do is make this your story. Do you understand the difference? We're not just studying material like we're in a classroom. What we're trying to do is identify with Bill and the other alcoholics in this book so that we don't need any more convincing. If you've got any doubt that you're an alcoholic that needs this program, and I kind of assume you don't because you're in here and you're spending the time you are now, but if you start getting that silly notion again that perhaps you can walk away from this, think again. You are fighting for your life. And this time around, and the reason we've called this group Relapse No More, is that's the point. Like, really, guys. And you know, here's the other thing. I can't fight for your life more than you're willing to fight for it yourself. I can give you all sorts of suggestions, she says in quotes, but if you don't do what I'm suggesting, let's play it forward. You take your own will back, you try and do it your way again, you don't do it with a sponsor that you want what they have, and you pick and choose from the program what works for you, and what makes you feel uncomfortable you don't do. How many times do you have to do that to know that you're going to drink again or use again? That's your experience. That is your experience for years to relapse. So you're going to be tempted, like I was, because I was kind of comfortable relapsing. Does that make sense to you? I did it so often. You know, I had somebody the other day say, well, I'm comfortable with detox. And we all know what hell detox is. But they've done it so many times and they've done it so frequently that their whole house is set up for detox. Electrolytes are standard in the cupboard. You know, barf bins are everywhere. Like, that's their reality. How far down the scale do you have to go? Are you going to live in the problem, or are you going to seek the solution? And what I'm seeing with you beautiful people is you're living in the solution. And I'm not going to go into Bill's story tonight because of the time, but I do want to have a chat with you guys and just see if the doctor's opinion has had any effect on you. And if there's anything you got out of tonight, which you think would help me to emphasize with people who are not, I'm proud to say, as far along as you guys are. You guys are doing a grand job, and I'm really proud of you. And with that, I'm going to end the recording.